I am drawing what the account says happened. Again, not what I think happened. I'm much more of a skeptic. So if there is a giant that appears on a barn, it will be a giant on the barn, and not like Joseph Sr. dressed up on the barn, for instance. Or if there's a ghost, there's a ghost, that kind of thing. So I love it because I just found as I stitched all these stories together, it really made a compelling narrative. Eventually we come out to each other, we trade notes, and realize that there's a lot of history we didn't realize that was super fascinating. But also, we kind of went backward. Like, we walked away, and then we went to our angry phase, and now we're coming back out of that. Years later, we're like, oh, okay, let's learn to enjoy, constructively deal with Mormonism, I guess. And that's how I decided to do it. Was I started to fall in love with the folklore tales and the treasure digging adventures. I loved all the books, but I know that's not for everybody. And so I was like, how can I contribute to the conversation? And Sally, I like to say, she inadvertently started Mormonism, because the story is that, he went to go get his seer stone by using her stone. I had a sketchbook. As I was reading it, I would kind of be sketching this stuff out. We started talking about it. We're like, these are kind of cool to see. Like, people, it's one thing to read it, but to see something, it's very striking. I ended up taking a Book of Mormon and cutting out some of those hieroglyphic pages, the facsimiles, and I folded them up and put them in a little box that I had made in school, I think, and then I cut a hole in my wall and put it in there because I thought someday someone will open this wall and they'll find this thing and it will convert them to Mormonism,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I hope my parents never listen to this episode, because I plastered back over the wall, and it's not a very good job. So.
This is Infants on Thrones.
Baby steps.
You want someone to preach to you?
The philosophies of men.
I like magical toys.
You want religion, do you?
Mingled with humor.
I don't believe in them.
There will be many willing to preach to you the philosophies of men mingled with humor.
We are evolving.
Baby steps.
You can buy anything in this world of money.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
All right, welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 744, The Glasslooker, Collected Tales of Joseph Smith, a graphic novel by Mark Elwood. And today I'm joined by the author, researcher, and illustrator, Mark Elwood, and his wife, Erin, for a few minutes at least, to discuss Mark's absolutely stunning work. And look, I know you can't see this right now, but I want to play for you the audio of the promotional video that he made for this book. Now, I encourage you to go and find it on YouTube, or you can find it on the Infants on Thrones website under this episode, or you can go to Mark's website, theglasslooker.com. This is absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. I'm super excited for this today. So here's the video, and then we're just going to go right into the interview.
My name is Joseph Smith. In the month of October, 1825, I hired with an old gentleman by the name of Josiah Stoll. He had heard something of a silver mine having been opened by the Spaniards in Harmony, Pennsylvania, and had, previous to my hiring him, been digging in order, if possible, to discover the mine. After I went to live with him, he took me with the rest of his hands to dig for the silver mine, at which I continued to work for nearly a month, without success in our undertaking. And finally I prevailed with the old gentleman to cease digging after it. Hence arose the very prevalent story of my having been a money digger.
Smith had told the deacon that many years before, a band of robbers had buried on his flat a box of treasure.
He had found a box of watches.
And as it was very valuable, they had by a sacrifice
The
placed a
digging
charm
was kept up
to
constantly,
protect it so that it
7
could not be
resting and
obtained
7 at
except
work.
by faith, accompanied by certain talismanic influence.
They commenced digging for hidden treasures. Told marvelous stories about those hobgoblins, caverns, and
He
berries.
deceived many farmers and induced them to dig nights for chests of gold. When the pig struck the chest, someone usually spoke.
Joe Smith told me that it would charm
Said
my
he took from a box of money. And the reason he gave for not obtaining the box was that it
So
moved.
they killed a dog.
Together with 1 or 2 others, they spent several days and nights, Smith with his mineral rod to find the hidden location, but failed to find the treasure.
Hold on, you have some glasses.
Cause this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
Hello, just a second. Start my video here. My wife's walking me through it. She's off camera. Her.
Well, you do not look like your picture anymore, Mark Elwood.
I know. This is the pandemic. Is what it did to me.
You know, I had my hair down to about not nearly as long as yours was, but I got it pretty long until a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, I'm starting to look like the Big Lebowski. I can't.
Yeah. Can you hear us okay and everything?
Uh-huh.
Right on.
Yeah. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, nice to meet you, Glenn.
Nice to meet you too. So are you going to join us, or are you just on to say
I
hi
just
for now?
here to say hi for a few minutes.
Okay. So Mark said you're an elected official.
Yeah, I'm on my local city council. I'm
Yeah?
a politician who loves to hear herself talk. So I have strong opinions on things and Mark and Mormon history. So I think I should let him have the spotlight.
Get his Beatles stuff in the background.
Yeah, I'm a huge Beatles
That's right.
fan.
Yeah. Have you heard the Spiritual Dimension of the Beatles podcast?
I haven't. I just learned about that today.
Okay.
I haven't listened to Infants in the last year or two since I got on council.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
personal life doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore. So I was looking to be like, well, what are they up to these days? Because I remembered your episode about like the One True Band a few, I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Oh, I did something like that. I was disappointed in Paul McCartney or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it was it. It
remember.
was like as you like had a more mature and like realistic view of the world, you transition from being a Paul fan to a Lennon fan.
Maybe, yeah, it was something like that. I don't know. I was at a hotel in Miami doing something for work, and everybody was out doing something, and I stayed in, and I recorded that. That's my memory of the thing. I don't even remember what I said.
Yeah.
Except afterwards, I thought, oh boy, I hope Paul McCartney never hears this, because I was kind of shitty to him.
Have you seen him perform?
Yeah, in 1990, so it was a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We saw him, I don't know, in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's
In a
still
while.
pretty
But
rocking.
he's still, I
Yeah.
mean, he still can put on a show. Yeah.
Yeah. He's good stuff. Yeah. So I have a friend who's an astrologer who wrote a book called The Spiritual Dimension of the Beatles, and he was looking at all of their charts and everything that's going on with the time. I think he just published the book this last week, but we started recording. We've only published, I think, maybe 6 episodes, and I don't know if we're going to keep doing it or not. But so yeah, if you're interested in that, the thing that I like best is where he goes in and talks about Paul's mother Mary and John's mother Julia communicating with them from the other side.
Wow.
And how like the astrology proves it. Anyway,
I'm
it's interesting stuff.
definitely going to check it out. Definitely.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
I have a stronger testimony in the Beatles than I do in Mormonism. So.
Really? Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a huge Beatles fan, and she loved that episode. She's told me about it before. I didn't listen to the one that you recorded about the Beatles, so I did listen to the Searstone one way back when.
Oh, okay.
When they first revealed the picture, and I think that was about all my exposure to infants, actually. Yeah, Aaron was.
I
fan.
listened all the time. And
I thought y'all were too irreverent. Sorry.
Yes.
He did.
Yeah. It was the other guys, not me. I was always the good one.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed though how you guys went into things that were so much bigger about culture and psychology and just humanity, and how Mormonism is just another example of how humans cope, basically.
Totally. I mean, and that's where that I feel like the value of having gone through a Mormon faith crisis is really like a microcosm for then how to engage with the rest of the world and all of the other fictions that everybody is invested in, and how do you negotiate a world where it's everybody has their own worldview and belief system, and it's all incomplete. It's all based on symbols. Some of it's true, some of it's not. It's just this real complicated tapestry of stuff that, so that's kind of the way that I frame the faith crisis now. And okay, now how do I re-engage with the rest of the world having gone through this?
For real.
Especially when it comes to the mind. It's all mind stuff.
Yeah. I feel like it's in these times we live in too, it's very helpful trying to understand Trumpism and QAnon and COVID denial and all those things, and how people's brains work and how groupthink works and culture works, and in groups and out groups and all of that. So yeah.
Cool. Well, nice to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you.
And are you going to stick around, or do you want to just have it be Mark?
I think it should just be Mark. Also, too, I should take our son upstairs probably, so he's not a distraction. But thanks for taking an interest in what Mark's doing, and
oh my God,
I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation.
She's far more articulate. I kind of wish she was joining us, to be honest.
Well, I don't have half the knowledge that Mark has on history stuff. So yeah. But anyway, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Right,
thanks,
enjoy, Mark.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So nice to meet you, Mark.
Thanks.
So infants was always too rowdy for you. That makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't find you guys till a lot later. I think Erin, when she was going through her faith crisis, she'd have it on her phone, kind of secretly listening. And I'd be like, who are those bros, joking about stuff,
Yeah. The guys that sit on the back row and just make fun of everything. Yeah. So tell me your story, Mark. What's your relationship to the Mormon Church today, and what do you want to say about how you got there?
All right. Let's see. Today, I have learned to love Mormonism in a new way. Mm-hmm. I was born in Utah, actually, Heber City, Utah, 1982. So I'm getting up there, I guess. But my Mormon cred is that my family, they're Willie Martin handcart pioneers, and my ancestor was Edwin Whiting, and he we always say he was a bodyguard of Joseph Smith, which we thought was very cool until I talked to Locke Mackay. I don't know if you know him, but he is an apostle in the COC. Okay. He is a descendant of Joseph Smith, and he would say to me, well, he didn't do a very good job, did he? And so being a bodyguard. Yeah. So but also I found out there's kind of a lot of bodyguards, like, and this kind of gets to the thing, right, where I think Joseph was very good at making everybody feel important and special. And so our guy, our ancestor, we thought was like the bodyguard, but really there was a lot. And, he's probably a Danite and everything.
That's what I thought you were going to say, that you found out he was a Danite. Yeah. I have a ancestor, Philemon C. Merrill, that was also a bodyguard of Joseph Smith, but I don't know any of the details about it. I don't know if he was a Danite.
I'm just surprised.
Swear an oath.
Yeah. I am always surprised to see like how many bodyguards there were. So but anyway, the other kind of random thing is that guy, Edwin, sorry, I don't mean to go so far in my history, but he's the only one that followed Brigham Young when the schism happened, and the rest of them joined the Cutlerites. And even today, like Whiting, I think, is the head of the Cutlerites. So
where are they based? I don't know much about
the Cutlerites. They're like, I think they're still there, like in Missouri.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're kind of a unique group still, because I think they have a endowment, but I don't know if there's very many of them left. I think they're pretty small now. Anyway, okay, sorry, I got sidetracked there, but basically, grew up in the church in Nevada. I think I enjoyed growing up in the church. It was pretty fun. Was able to kind of embrace the weirdness of Mormonism and kind of enjoyed, debating with my high school friends who there's not a lot of Mormons there where I grew up in Elko, Nevada. So, most of my friends were non-Mormons. And in that way, it kind of, I think, makes you, same thing with the mission, right? It kind of makes you become more Mormon when you're kind of defending it.
Right.
So let's see. And I was always like a very black and white thinker, like whatever was said, I would go with. Like I was hardcore, believed it, and didn't really question much. My dad was a convert, and the only thing I can remember kind of questioning was one time he said when he was joining the church, he thought it was a little odd that the word adieu was in the Book of Mormon.
Oh yeah.
And I was, so yeah, that just like things like that. I guess I also was a Book of Mormon geography. I was always trying to find out like where did the Book of Mormon take place,
Yeah.
And then, but I always kind of resigned to, well, God doesn't want us to know because it would, the whole point of the Book of Mormon is we have to rely on faith, and so I always, go ahead.
Were you like me when you were bored in sacrament meeting? You'd turn to the back of the scriptures and look at the maps and the facsimiles for the Book of Abraham and just kind of like pour over that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, lots of embarrassing things I did with that for sure. I think
embarrassing.
Oh gosh, yes. I think at one point, because I thought it was like hidden knowledge, like super cool,
Yeah.
So at one point, I think my poor parents, I don't even know if they know this, but I ended up like, taking a Book of Mormon and like cutting out some of those hieroglyphic pages, the facsimiles.
Yeah.
And I like folded them up and put them in a little box that I had made in school, I think. And then I cut a hole in my wall and put it in there because I thought someday someone will open this wall and they'll find this thing and it will convert them to Mormonism,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I hope my parents never listen to this episode because I like plastered back over the wall and it's not a very good job. So I don't know. Are
they still in that house?
Yeah, they're still there.
So it's still there?
Yeah. I was just there actually because I was out for Sunstone and I saw the little like, messed up part of the wall. And I'm like, oh man, I should probably get that out of there. But anyway, so I was a nerd, way into it, just thought there was like lost knowledge, the whole restoration thing was very cool to me. So I was kind of excited to go on my mission, went on a mission to Tennessee.
Okay.
It was Tennessee Knoxville mission. And let's see. That is where I really started having I guess people call it cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
Where I started to see, and I think this happens a lot when people like go to BYU for college and stuff, and for the first time or something, and you see kind of that people are not living the standards. Definitely my mission was like really not very great. Like I ended up replacing a missionary at one point that was, sleeping with a member and drugging his companion to be able to do it. Just like, it was just a lot of that kind of thing. And
he drugged his companion so that he could sneak out without being detected.
Yeah, absolutely. He would sneak out at night and so he drug his companion a lot. Anyway, there was a lot of those type of things going on. And so it just sort of shocked me, I guess, because I was always, pretty much a goody two shoes kind of guy, like I didn't straight shooter, I guess. I don't know. And the other thing that started happening to me was lots of spying and tattletelling and stuff like that going on the mission, which I was kind of, it was weird to see, and then also see the other end of it where the mission president would say things like, I felt inspiration today to ask, and I'd be like, no, we told you, or someone told you, right? So I was like, well, maybe that's just the way the mission runs. I was able to kind of rationalize that when I got out of my mission.
Yeah.
A bunch of like boys that are just all, a bunch of teenage boys really you're trying to manage. So
yeah. And then a lot of them with some political ambitions to become zone leaders and assistants to the president, and a lot of cutthroat stuff that I saw in my mission.
And the ones that would get rewarded weren't always like they were oftentimes the very ambitious and
ruthless ones.
Yeah, ruthless, like corrupt kind of,
Yeah.
So anyway, so that really bothered me, but you kind of forget, you kind of, you come back and they have you tell the best parts of your mission, and it helps you kind of forget the bad stuff and move on. And next thing you know, I met Erin on my mission as well. She was from my area, so that was the best thing coming out of my mission is I met my wife there. Nice. I was one of those guys. And so we moved on. Erin was at Agnes Scott College in Atlanta, and I had nothing. I went back to Elko, Nevada. There's nobody there. No one stays there. So I was like, well, where am I going to go to school? And I ended up looking at Atlanta because Erin was here, and went to art school out here. I should mention, let's see, I guess the whole reason I went on my mission in the first place was I had an older brother, or I have an older brother, sorry. Anyway, but he had to kind of, he left the church as a teenager, and he had to like fight like tooth and nail. He's the first one, oldest child. I have 7 sisters, and so for him it was a big deal, and I saw what it kind of did to my parents. So I knew that I had to be like, I'm the only other brother. I'm pretty much probably the only other person who's going to go on a mission, because we were very, boys go on missions, girls get married, type of thing. And
so you felt a lot of pressure within your family to pick up the slack.
Right. And so I think that carried over kind of into our marriage a little bit, where I felt like, I had to make sure I kept, doing the things, going to church, and, making sure we were doing what we were doing, or what we're supposed to do. And Erin, we kept kind of egging each other on, even though at some point we both were kind of leaving, we weren't feeling it anymore. And but we were afraid to talk to each other.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things that happened that was a big moment for me was that there was kind of like a special broadcast into the kind of like southern area, and it was actually Monson speaking. And before Monson, there was all these other speakers, and they had all kind of it was a very sexist thing, and I knew Erin was raging feminist at that point, and so for her it was like really bothering her, and the whole conference was bad in that way. But then Monson got up, and again, this was really poorly attended. Nobody, I mean, I don't know how many people were actually watching this thing, but in our area, not very many. Monson gets up and he starts to speak, and it is nonsense. Like, he's completely off his rocker. He's like telling half stories. And at one point he even says the phrase, and I remember this one, he says, "I have spoken beautifully this evening." And you're like, who's that? Really, you haven't, like, it was very weird. And we both were kind of looking at each other like, this guy is not a prophet, like, and at that point we kind of all, I think we just kind of faded away. Like, it's easy to do here in Atlanta. Like, there's where I'm at now. There's not very many Mormons. And at some point our ward split, and everyone just kind of assumed we were in the other ward at that point. We just kind of let them assume that, and we walked away.
What time frame was this? What year are you talking about?
I want to say this is about 10 years ago.
Okay.
But is that right? When Monson? Oh, sorry, I didn't finish the story. The whole point is that the reason.
But you did speak beautifully.
Great. Well, the reason Monson was, we think, that night, Gordon B. Hinckley died, or he was like in the hospital, and I think Monson was feeling the weight of that, and like suddenly he realized he was going to be in charge of all these people, and it was kind of a early, I guess, version of his dementia that came out that night, because like he was fine after that for the next couple conferences and stuff. He was fine, right? But it was just that night it was very much like how he was at the very end, where he was kind of just out of it.
But so you and Aaron have been out for 10 years or so.
Yeah, I want to say, well, as of this year, we're out 10 years. So I'm not sure when that falls in there, actually.
So what have you done with your art? So you went to school as an artist, because it's really good.
Thanks. No, so what ended up happening, I ended up going to art school, like I said, in here in Atlanta, but then I got a job after graduation as an aerospace artist. I don't know how to say it, a space artist, I guess. So I created a lot of technical renderings of spacecraft and high, like point-to-point vehicles, like super fast, like supersonic type planes and things like that. And the reason this was it kind of leads into the other stuff I did, which is that I had to be creative within a structure, a tight structure of whatever the engineers provided me. I couldn't just make details up, right? So that carries over into my book, which we can talk about, but basically that I try to illustrate within a historical document and try not to create too many details up. So I did that. I actually did that for 10 years as an aerospace artist, and then started doing that freelance. And because it was pretty high demand, and as Aaron's career took off, we realized mine was kind of high stress and not as good of pay as what Aaron was doing. So, and I didn't really have a problem like being a stay-at-home dad. Like I thought it was a pretty cool chance to kind of, come home and work out of the house, and it was flexible. And well, I guess to tie this all together, so what ended up happening was we finally kind of came out to each other and decided we would leave the church, and we just kind of walked away, like I said. Then it wasn't until a while later that we kind of grew interested in it. And I think Aaron at that time is binging your podcast and others, and she's definitely doing a lot of the media consumption. I'm doing some reading. I read Rough Stone Rolling. I did a lot of that kind of stuff and ended up down the rabbit hole that way. Eventually we come out to each other, we trade notes, and realize that there's a lot of history we didn't realize that was super fascinating. But also we kind of went backward, like we walked away and then we went to our angry phase. And now we're coming back out of that, years later, we're like, oh, okay, let's learn to enjoy, constructively deal with Mormonism, I guess. And that's how I decided to do it. Was I started to fall in love with the folklore tales and the treasure digging adventures. And so I decided to kind of go headlong into that. And I loved all the books, but I know that's not for everybody. And so I was like, how can I contribute to the conversation? And I'm in a point in my life, I have the time because I'm freelance. I can tell a story, I can try to revive some of these really obscure tales. Originally, I think what happened was I was reading Dan Vogel, and I really do blame Dan Vogel for the path I'm on, honestly. I started reading his Making of a Prophet. And I had a sketchbook. As I was reading it, I would kind of be sketching this stuff out. And my wife was like, I think it was her idea at one point, but we started talking about it. We're like, these are kind of cool to see. Like, people, it's one thing to read it, but to see something, it's very striking. So I started like thinking of, well, I don't know if you remember those like Book of Mormon illustrated books that had like
I could go pull it off the shelf and show you one of them right now.
All right.
I loved those.
Yeah. Okay, well, I was growing up with those, and so I was like, maybe I could do like a parody of those, and that'd be super funny, and it was not very serious. I was like, maybe I could do like the treasure digging, and show some of those. I didn't realize how many treasure digs there were, though. So at first, it was a very manageable project, but then after a while, it just evolved into being like, no, let's try to flush these out a little bit and try to do like vignettes, like each source or like a group of sources, we can kind of tell a little story and try to stitch them together in an overall arc. And that's what ended up happening. That's how I have volume 1.
How many volumes are there going to be, Mark?
I don't want to pin that down, but I will say that it's at least 3. All right. So we didn't get very far in the first volume. Joseph has, retrieved his first seer stone.
Yeah.
And the real crazy stuff begins after that.
So that you think that there might be at least 3. This first one you dedicated to Martin Harris, then I'm guessing the next one's going to be Oliver Cowdery and David Whitmer.
No. So I kind of feel like I really what I dream of is that this whole thing will be combined into one big old massive book. And I dedicate to Martin Harris because honestly, without Martin Harris, we wouldn't have ended up with Mormonism in many ways. But also, he just he was kind of like, for when I decided that he was a mark, for Joseph. He was a wealthy guy, and he got used up, and I feel bad for him. But he's also, I can respect his kind of like childlike faith. Like he just really wanted to believe,
Yeah.
And so I like that. I at the time I kind of thought he was the first person that Joseph kind of manipulated, but there was many before Martin.
All right. So tell me a little bit about your view of Joseph Smith then, because you spent a lot of time with these really obscure tales, and I've read a few of them. So I several years ago, I did another podcast called Early Mormon Audio, where I took like John C. Bennett's book. I think it's Mormonism Unveiled. I don't remember the exact title of it. And I just read it word for word, and I published probably 8 different segments of it. And there's so many of those affidavit stories in there. Like I recognized the Sally and Willard Chase and that purple guy, a lot of the sources that you had in there were there as well. So I've come across some of them, not all of them that you had. But I love that about what you're doing with this project. Not only is it absolutely gorgeous to look at, but it gathers these stories in a place that are so much more easily accessible, I think, than anything that I've ever seen before.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I love just like grabbing, like back there behind me is all of Dan Vogel's 5 volumes of early Mormon documents and Lucy's history and stuff. I love that kind of stuff. But again, I just realized it's not for everyone. And right now,
like trying to make your way through D. Michael Quinn's, was it folk magic in the early Mormon worldview, something like that?
Magical worldview. Yeah. I ended up splitting his book in half because like that's the only way to read and do the footnotes, because it literally is half of his book is footnotes. But that's super dense. I can barely handle that. And I read a lot. So it's just so accessible, and a lot of people love graphic novels, especially regarding history right now. So I thought it was just a good way for me to, again, constructively deal with my issues with Mormonism. So but your question was like, how do I feel about Joseph? And
what's your personal opinion of who was this guy? And let me tell you, Mark, I recently had a psychic tell me that kind of I was Joseph Smith in another life. Just keep that in mind.
I'll try not to offend.
Don't offend me too much here. Like you can't hear something like that and then not have it be like this little kernel in the back of my mind now. Every time I hear somebody say something about Joseph Smith, I'm like, wait a minute, are they talking about me?
Yeah.
No, I don't really think that I'm Joseph Smith, by the way, Mark, but it's fun.
Okay. Well, I just want to put an asterisk by this because I feel like my response will probably change quickly, like it changes all the time probably. And I honestly, like a lot of times we have this discussion, like who was in on it, and like who with like the Book of Mormon, like who knew what was going on, or and honestly those conversations turn out different every time. So I do have a lot of theories, but so what I would say though about Joseph is that, ooh, man. Well, I like Dan Vogel again with his pious fraud. I kind of subscribe to that. But I also kind of think there might be something going on with a mental health issue. Possibly some kind of bipolar thing. So in that way, I don't know, it's almost like that lets me, if I subscribe to that theory with like a mental health issue, it kind of gives him a little bit of like, it's hard to judge him as severely. And so I think there might be something there. However, he definitely, so I'm focusing again, like on early stuff. I don't go into the polygamy. Like I'm going to end this where the church is founded, the Book of Mormon is published. So he hasn't done a lot of the things that we kind of hate, that he did at that point. Now he has no matter what side of where you land on, whether it's real or not, he has definitely been deceptive and used people a lot at this point. So I think he learns that over time, and he learns that he's someone that can control people, and he's someone that can get people to do what he wants them to do and make people believe what he says.
I'll say, because I did read the entire thing, including your end notes, and you're very respectful. It's your approach with this is not, and I think you've got some statements in your end notes about this. You're not writing this for skeptics. You're not writing it for believers. You're really just trying to be, like you said earlier, very faithful to what the historical sources say without elaborating on it, without commenting on it. You're not expanding anything out with it. And Joseph at this point in time is a teenage boy, right? I mean, he's probably 17, 18 years old in the way that you're depicting him here.
Yeah, it's 1821. I'll have a timeline in my final print, just so you know, and kind of, because that was one of the things that I've got feedback on, is like, no one knows these stories and they don't understand where it fits in the structure that we already know.
And because the dates that you do include are the dates of the affidavits that you're basing these vignettes off of, and those are like 1876 or 1890, a lot later than when it actually would have happened.
So so he's just a teenager, and so I mean, he's already just, what teenager is, sort of, he's a hero, right? He's the hero of my story, but he's not exactly like a perfect hero, you know what I mean? He's flawed lots of ways.
So I'll tell you another reason why I had so much interest when I saw this, and I know you've been working on this since 2017, is that right?
Geez, I think it's been, that's about right. 2017.
And it just popped up on my radar just yesterday or the day before. I mean,
I've been flying low.
Really, but a couple of years ago, I was toying with the idea of creating like a TV show version of this, and I wanted to focus on exactly the same time period that you're depicting in here. And I loved the idea of Joseph having some kind of a romance with Sally Chase. I loved the way you depicted her in there.
You and my wife. That's
I kind of have the sense that she was his first, and and a lot of the anger that she has towards him later I don't know, is like a jilted lover type
She never
undertones. I
marries,
felt,
she ends
yeah,
up, she never marries. So that's interesting.
yeah. And then this Lumen Walters character, man,
Mhm.
like when I first found out about him, you remember the third Indiana Jones movie where you've got River Phoenix as the young Indiana Jones, and he sees like this archaeologist that looks like an Indiana Jones archetype that becomes his hero, and he puts his hat. Like I've always felt like young Joseph and Lumen Walters had that kind of a relationship, and you really do kind of tease that out a little bit, even though you're not elaborating on their relationship. You're just going from the brief mentions that there are of Lumen Walters here and there. But that guy's such a fascinating character to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I plan on making a video about him to kind of go with my other video, but because again, yeah, he's super fascinating to me. He will make a few more appearances, as will Sally. I mean, they come in and out of Joseph's story for, like, we don't realize. I think people don't realize that, like, the people that Joseph was hiding the plates from were all these people that he hung out with for years.
Right. They were part of his gang of treasure diggers, or whatever you want to call it, that they were doing.
And Sally, I like to say, she inadvertently started Mormonism, because the story is that, he went to go get his seer stone by using her stone. And from there, we can assume there's a lot of quotes that say that he dug the well on the Chase's property. But it was like pretend. It wasn't really to dig a well. It was for something else. And so when he found the stone, you could assume that he probably used the white stone to find the brown stone, which then gets us the Book of Mormon. And then I was going to say, Sally, what I like about her is that she almost finds the plates. Like in Lucy's account, she talks about how she, they go look for the plates that are hiding in the Cooper shop across the street, and they pull up the floorboards and pull out the box, and they even like smash the box in the street, but the plates aren't actually in it. And then Joseph says, well, don't worry, an angel appeared to me and I moved it into the loft. And so, you can see, like, I mean, somehow she was able to find that, right? Did her stone work, or was she possibly able to get some information to find that they were there, depending on how you look at it. So I always thought that's a cool part of the story.
That's one of the things that I love how you did in this graphic novel, Mark. When he looks into the hat, so Sally shows him, here, you put this stone and you put your face in the hat. And I know you took some creative license in that, because you talk about that in your endnotes. But then you talk about creative license. How are you going to visually depict what Joseph might have seen when he put his head in that hat? I loved how you did that. That was so cool. What did you base that on?
Well, geez, I think, so I majored in animation. And so to me, I could always just kind of picture like a wispy kind of changing kind of thing that he might see within her stone. And to be honest, like whenever he gets his stone, I wanted to have a contrast there. That's more like his stone is more epic, more grand, right? He can see things better in it.
More clearly,
yeah. And we don't have a lot. We have like, I think,
because it's like Harry Potter's wand almost, right? The stone that chooses him.
Yeah.
That he can see more in that white stone when he gets it than he did in Sally's.
Yeah. And I was just gonna say, like with David Whitmer, I think David Whitmer talks. He's the only other place we get a idea of what he might have seen, and he talks about. I think it's him. He talks about like the Roman numeral, or I'm sorry, the hieroglyph, and below it he would have in Roman font like the words of the Book of Mormon, right? That correspond with the glyph, and so I'm like, and then it would like fade away and then reappear or something, and I think that's maybe where I started to get the idea. I was like, well, if it's something that can come and go, perhaps it's wispy. I don't know.
Yeah, wispy.
But I also thought it might kind of, a lot of these stones, like his brownstone has like lines in it, layers, and so I thought maybe it's kind of has that sort of effect as well. But I don't know. It's just creative way.
Now, when I look at what he was doing, especially with that group of money diggers, and when I was trying to create, because I didn't care about sticking as closely to the historic sources as you did. I wanted to create a story around this thing, so I was doing a lot of my own creative license. But I have this really strong impression that Joseph learned how to intoxicate an audience using like psilocybin mushrooms or some other things like this that probably Lumen Walters was taught him. And that this group of treasure seekers, not only were they taking people out to dig treasure, which was fun, but they kind of given him a little bit of a trip while they were out doing it. Have you come across anything like that, or do you have any thoughts on entheogen use and Joseph Smith? Will that be a part of any of the future books?
So I do think that probably happened. I don't have anything solid, there's not a solid record that says anything about it. So, but I do think that there's something going on there, and how I want to treat it is because I think that can be very it can offend people easily.
Polarizing.
Yeah, it's very polarizing. Yeah. So I want to kind of nod at it when I can. And
like something that's in the background that maybe
I actually did illustrate some mushrooms in that last scene, but they're kind of hidden just for that reason. But I think that I do think so. So there's some other like who's the guy that String, like he did some weird
James Strang.
Yeah, he did some weird kind of thing called the Enlightenment, I think, where he poured some kind of oil and it had phosphorus kind of things in it, and possibly some. I mean, in Kirtland too, it gets pretty wild, and
with the dedication of the temple.
Yeah, it seems to be that there's a lot of or a potential drug use there. So but I don't know. Again, I want to treat this as something that I hope that you could just pick up as a believer and feel very uncomfortable reading, but you could maybe get through it. And similarly with an ex-Mormon or whatever or a non-Mormon, you might be able to get through it. And so that's polarizing, but hey, I mean, I personally, yes, I think that probably that was going on.
Well, you had those that story of Lucy Mack and
Sarah
Rockwell, right? Porter Rockwell's mom, smoking pipes with each other. That was something that I had never even considered before. So seeing that was really really cool, really eye-opening.
Just exactly. Like I like to that is me kind of pushing it, right? But I wanted to be like, okay, look,
but you're doing it based on historical sources.
And there's a very clear account of someone who visited and saw very early pages from the Book of Mormon, and while he was there, he described how she lit their pipe with the end of a broom splint kind of thing, and puffed away at it. So and then I also know through archaeology they found a lot of pipe broken pipes and ashes and things around the cabin. So
and she was known as like a herbal lorist or something, like she knew medicines. So
that's true. And and I want to bring in the female characters as much as possible, and I think that Lucy, luckily, we have a lot of, she mostly is reporting Joseph's story, but she is talking a lot in there and in her account, and so I think that it's worth kind of showing her as much as possible. So whenever a story says he like for instance he wanted his parents to take him to the chases. A lot of times I might just use Lucy, or whenever I can, I would do that probably.
Yeah.
But
And you were really uncomfortable with the racial undertones, the racist undertones of the mound builder narrative. Like, you
that was
made a
my
point
lawyer
of going,
wife.
the author does not agree with this at all. The author thinks this is gross.
Yeah. My lawyer wife also, she wanted to make sure that I made a good statement there. But yeah, it's true. I mean, I think it's funny that, not funny, it's sad that that's a thing that exists in the Book of Mormon still, and that it came from that time period. And it, everybody, we always say people are a product of their time or whatever, but I mean, it still is a very wrong viewpoint.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people believed, other contemporaries of Joseph believed that there was some white race before, and it wasn't just like the poor and uneducated. It was everybody.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I did my master's degree in folklore and mythology, and my master's thesis was on the lost tribes of Israel, the lore, the stories in Mormonism, specifically that I came across on my mission in Japan.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things that I researched for that was what the attitudes were of early Americans at the time of the formation of the country. And there were a lot that believed that the lost tribes of Israel were found as remnants of the Native Americans that they came across there. And the mound builders had been these ancient white people that were the lost tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, Joseph Smith didn't just make that up. That was something that was floating around in the environment that he was in and had been for a long time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a little bit of a sign that it's a work of 19th century. Coming out of there. But anyway, I didn't know that until much later. It's not anything you learn in school, or I mean in church. But
so how long did it take you? So this book is about 170 to 174 pages. I think it's eight chapters, 7 or 8 chapters, beautifully illustrated pages. How long does it take you to create something like this?
Geez, well, unfortunately, the pandemic really kind of skewed like my time frame on that. Like, I will say, like, some days I will do a whole page in a day. As far as like, I do them as pencil on paper, big 11 by 17s. And then it takes another day for the inking and coloring. So it's like a two day, but honestly, it takes a lot longer than that usually because of, just I have a kid, and I have to work when I can. And so it ends up being like a lot longer. And I don't really have a good grasp on how long it took me. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
do you have a time frame for when the next one of these is going to come out?
Okay. Yeah. So I will say, so this one was probably the hardest one to write. One, it's beginning, right? I've never done anything like this before, but also it's a really like nebulous time, like whatever, like there's not a lot of stories. They're not very well fleshed out. And so I ended up going in these, like, I'd be working for a little bit and then I'd run into something and be like, oh man, I got to research this. And I go back and research spiral for a while. So 1822. So basically, like I've illustrated a bulk of what happens in 1821 and a little bit of 1820. Now I'm getting into 1822. And that one is basically where I started my book originally. And so it's way more fleshed out and it's much more, I have a lot of vignettes, right, that are just better put together. So I feel like I can probably produce this next section quicker. Also with my son in school, hopefully, depending on how this next wave of the virus goes. So I have this dream that, it's 2021. I finished 1821. But if I could keep this up, so it's like 200
each
years,
year? Yeah.
Or whatever. Is it 200 years? Yeah. So like, I thought that would be cool. So maybe
that is cool.
I'd be 1822. We'll be ready at the end of the year, kind of thing.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
But
what kind of a response have you had so far?
Pretty good. Like, I was pretty surprised. Now Sunstone, where I kind of launched this, this last Sunstone wasn't as big because it was half virtual, half in person. But honestly, like, I've had a booth at Sunstone for a couple of years, and I love just coming, people coming over, and I just nerd out with them about the treasure digging and stuff. And I think it's becoming more mainstream, and I get a lot of people that are, in the believing camp that are kind of wanting to know these stories. And to be honest, I think they're way cooler than what we've been taught. So
the stories or the people?
The stories, sorry.
Okay.
The people are cool too.
The stories are the believers. The believers are way cooler than what we've been told.
Sorry. So I have a lot of fun just talking with people, and I have had, some believers that are interested in it. Definitely a lot of ex-Mormons, and but it's been way more, honestly, like, I'm making it for me. Like, I kind of wish this already existed, because like I kind of want it to just be, like you said, almost like an HBO show or a mini series or something that already existed. It doesn't exist. So I was like, well, I'm, like I said, I can do it. Maybe I'll make this like this thing that is a little more accessible to people, and I hope that someday, it becomes something better. But this is a step anyway. So yeah, but generally, like, people like it. Like, I'm surprised by that. So yeah.
Yeah, you're surprised. So when I showed it to my partner, because I was just geeking out over it, and she left the church about 10 years ago. She's like, why would anybody spend their time on this stuff? Like, I'm so not interested in Joseph Smith at all anymore. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe you're not, but I'll ask him. So tell me, Mark, why would you spend all your time on this?
Oh, geez, it confuses my dad too, or any of my family members that are in the church, right? That like, why, and I would say that it's just been kind of a journey for me to kind of, I just want to learn as much as I can, and I guess, again, it's just sort of a way for me to deal with it, like all the things. I definitely felt very betrayed when I left the church, and when I found out things that I had not been taught. And so I think it's just a way I can kind of enjoy Mormonism again. And because I'm not, you never really leave the church alone, right? So I just embraced it, I guess. And this was a facet of it that I enjoyed still.
So you have used it as a way to fall back in love with Mormonism as a thing, but because that was the word that you used when we first started talking. You kind of love Mormonism in a way.
Yeah, I guess I would say I kind of, in a way that I look at any sort of almost like fantasy story. Like, I love kind of how it evolved, like I really, it's just that I love the folklore. I love the stories, because, like, honestly, a lot of these stories I'm drawing are not necessarily true, right? They're just stories that people said. They're stories that people say are about Joseph. They think they're about our Joseph, right? It's possible Joseph Smith is a pretty common name. There's a lot of Joseph Smiths, and I'm aware of that. And I know that probably some of these treasure digs that I'm illustrating down the road are going to be, just ascribed to him, because he's the most famous treasure seer in the area. But I also know that there's a whole heck of a lot more that are not fleshed out that we know about. And so I kind of like, well, it kind of averages out.
I see the little toad over your shoulder there.
Yeah.
Tell me about this guy that you got sitting on your table there.
Okay. Well, he just traveled back from Sunstone. He was a display piece at my booth, but that's kind of a reference to the earlier accounts, Willard Chase and Orlando Saunders, I think, talking about a toad-like creature that rises up into the form of a man. And I use him sometimes with my plates. I don't know if you can see him. I have replicas of gold plates back there.
Oh yeah, up there on that shelf back there.
Yeah.
Oh well, that's nice. Your shelf hasn't broken totally.
It's pretty heavy.
It's pretty heavy.
I also have a crazy person wall over here that tracks out like where the digs are.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that, but
yeah, no, with the yarn and the thumbtacks that are pointing to it does look like you're tracing a crime scene.
Yeah. And I'm a very visual guy, so I have to do things like that to keep track of things. But anyway, yeah.
Have you come across that? So there was, when I was doing that early Mormon audio project, there was a story that I had never heard before that came from Isaac Hale, Emma Smith's father, that and so this would have been after the time period that you're focusing on, but before the Book of Mormon was published, and that Joseph was telling people, or that he had told Isaac that their unborn child, so Emma was pregnant at the time, would be the one who would translate the Book of Mormon. Yeah. And so one of the original ideas of Joseph Smith was that the Book of Mormon would be translated by this infant, this child, and that would make it even more miraculous that it had happened. I'd never heard that before. Did you come across that in your research?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's more than just, I think there's several people that say that.
Oh, besides Isaac Hale?
Yeah. I believe one of the nephews says it there, but anyway, yeah, definitely that story is there. And like, he's born unfortunately prematurely, and they said
didn't survive the birth.
And they even said he was deformed, and didn't survive, so that's too bad. But I think Joseph, there's a lot of like conflicting stories through while I'm digging through this stuff. And to be honest, like even the stone, right? I think it's probably going to bother people that some people say that the first stone he found was the brown stone and not the white one. So, but my opinion is that the story, Joseph is very good at, well, we know this, in fact, from his own history, that he can rewrite his own history. He's fine with that. And I do think that he perhaps told different stories to different people, and they went with it.
And as they're reporting things, you got to question their memory and what details are they remembering right and what are they not. It's all lost within the mists of time.
But I think like he understood human behavior really well, where he would drop hints and drop details, knowing that later, person A and person B are going to meet up in a tavern and trade notes. The story grows by other people, he just has to kind of start it. And people are farmers and they're bored, I think, too. It's just like, when you're not farming, what are you doing? And I think a lot of it is you're building these stories. So
you had one illustration I remember where it was like Joseph was in a young teenage Joseph is in a tavern, and there's like 3 or 4 young attractive ladies that are like kind of fawning around him, and it's very like to me it's kind of like foreshadowing. There's a lot of subtext there, like nothing really explicit comes out of it, but was that intentional? You're foreshadowing his
a little,
interest in women and their interest in him.
And honestly, like so much of that just comes straight out of that account, which is very problematic, but it's the I think it's the was it Thomas Burrell account? Or no, wait, which one is that? The Green? Oh yeah, sorry, it's the Samuel Green account. So he talks about how he was annoyed with how these girls, he would tell these girls their fortunes, and I do, yeah, I mean, sometimes I do stuff unintentionally, not intentionally. I know where the story's gonna go. So yeah, I know where it's gonna go eventually, right? So it's hard to not be like, Joseph was a womanizer, like at some point, and he's a teenager right now. So
yeah,
how does that play out,
Right. But cool. All right. So you're doing pre-orders right now through September 1st. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. And
so if people are interested in this, they want to find out more, they want to get a copy, where do they go, Mark?
They go to theglasslooker.com and you'll find it there. It's the beginning of an epic adventure, and I hope everybody likes it as much as I like making it. It's been super fun, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. Just if you like, I think where it's gonna fill a little bit when we're further in, like sort of sort of an early American folktale, like Headless Horseman or
Legend of Sleepy Hollow type stuff.
Yeah. Rip Van Winkle, some of that stuff. There's so much great. So I guess that's one thing I should say is that I am drawing what the account says happened. Again, not what I think happened. I'm much more of a skeptic, but I'm drawing. So if there is a giant that appears on a barn, it will be a giant on the barn, and not like Joseph Sr. dressed up on the barn, for instance, or if there's a ghost, that kind of thing. So I love it because I just found as I stitched all these stories together, it really made a compelling narrative, and I try to follow the hero's journey. There's been some people that have compared Joseph with the Joseph Campbell hero's journey, and I find that it fits really well with that. So that's kind of how I stitched it all out together.
Very cool. Well, Mark, thank you for taking the time to talk with me about this, and I hope that I'll have a bunch of listeners who are interested in this, and you'll get some good book sales from this because you deserve it. Like the work, the love that you put into this, it's very obvious to me that this is a passion project. And if nothing ever comes of it other than the fact that it's there, you'll be thrilled. I can tell.
Yeah.
And so thanks again for sharing that with me. And I look forward to seeing how this progresses over the years as well.
Thanks. And thanks for reaching out.
Yeah.
Put down the weapons that you use against yourself. You don't need them anymore.
Hey there. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I have more to say about this topic, and I'm going to do that with a follow-up behind-the-scenes sharing time episode on Patreon. So, if you're in a position where you can throw me a few dollars each month to support the work that I put into creating this podcast, please come and support me on Patreon, where you'll also get access to additional content. Did you know that I also create sharing time episodes that are available only to Patreon subscribers? I've been doing that for a few years, so there's a lot of content there that you can have access to. So please come and support this podcast if you can. I greatly appreciate it.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew, Ryan,
Carol,
Keith,
Ashley, and I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did.
Anyone for the closing prayer?
My worst crime is an inside job. Dark thoughts taking over like an inside mob. I tune into the scene between the eyes and take a breath.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
I sit still and watch the thoughts float past me. Never mind the future, never mind what the past be. I like to jump and let the universe catch me. Free fall, watch the beauty blow past me. I keep my pockets light, destination in sight. Keep My actions elevated to compassionate heights. I'm walking past the fight, laying down on Sunday night, choosing love when I pick up this night.